source of illegal immigration, actually. So people who come in on work and study visas and they overstay. Now, you've got a returns program. You've already told me that you've done, in fact, we discussed this before, you've done quite a lot of returns, but the numbers run into hundreds of thousands. How are you going to get people who've overstayed their visas? First, how are you going to find them? Mm-hmm. And secondly, are you going to drag them onto planes? I mean, what are you actually going to do? What is the big idea that's going to cut those hundreds of thousands to less than hundreds of thousands?
So we're doing a major digital overhaul now with the introduction of e-visas. It's effectively like a digital ID now for all overseas citizens. It will set out whether people have a right to work or not. That means we've then got much clearer systems in place to be able to track whether people have actually returned at the point that they should have done at the end of their visa or not, to be able to then take follow-up action, and also new equipment for the big increase in illegal working raids that we've also done. That's been about a 40% increase in illegal working raids since the election. Part of a whole approach that we're taking across the board to make sure that the rules are being respected and enforced. You're right, the system that we inherited really was broken, but we are turning that round step by step. All the things
you've told me, though they may all be individually worthy, feel like they're going to make a relatively small difference. I mean, thousands, when we're talking actually now about hundreds of thousands. You want to bring the numbers down by, I know you won't give me a number, but from what you said, at least 250,000, maybe 300,000. This doesn't add up to 300,000.
Well, so the biggest increase in net migration over the last 4 years, that 4-year period where it quadrupled, the biggest increase was work and study visas. Yep. So what we are saying already is here's some new controls we're going to introduce on the skilled worker visa, for example, and the care worker visa.
What the Conservatives
The care worker
actually.
visa. Well, no, we're going much further than that. So they belatedly reversed a small number of the changes that they made because, look, they were responsible for this massive increase.
All right.
So we're introducing a much tighter rules. So if you are doing less than a graduate job, then actually you won't be included under the skilled worker visa unless it's for a temporary shortage occupation. Then there will be new workforce strategies, new requirements to train here in the UK. Those changes, the combination of just those low-skilled visa changes and also the care worker changes, together, that is a reduction of probably in the region of up to 50,000 low-skilled worker visas, a reduction in the course of this year alone.
Are you going to drag them onto planes? What are you going to do? Trevor Phillips didn't just ask a question. He detonated a political grenade right in the middle of Yvette Cooper's polished but pitiful talking points. It was the kind of moment that makes PR teams weep. Cooper, the so-called Home Secretary-in-Waiting, was left blinking, stammering, and tap-dancing around a basic question. What is Labour actually going to do about visa overstayers? And let's be clear, this wasn't a gotcha. This was journalism 101. Trevor simply pointed out the obvious. If your plan is to look compassionate while refusing to enforce immigration law, then what's the end game? Smiling them into compliance? Teleporting them out of Heathrow with good vibes? Yvette Cooper looked like a deer caught in the blinding headlights of accountability. Her response wasn't just weak, it was insultingly vague. She had no figures, no timeline, no operational plan. Just soft-focused soundbites wrapped in political evasion. This is the woman Labour wants us to believe can handle one of the most explosive issues in modern British politics, immigration. And yet, faced with a direct question, she collapsed into bureaucratic waffle that made even Phillips squint in disbelief. You could practically see him thinking, is this seriously your answer? And here's the kicker, she knows she has no answer. That's why her voice started cracking, and her sentence structure began to resemble a malfunctioning GPS. The Home Office, under Labour, is being sold to the public like a refurbished used car. It looks good from a distance, but the engine's shot and the wheels are already falling off. Trevor Phillips didn't humiliate Yvette Cooper. She did that all by herself the moment she failed to answer the most basic question of enforcement. So here's your reminder. Behind the polished press releases and carefully staged compassion lies a party with no spine and even less strategy. And in just one brutal exchange, Trevor Phillips made that painfully and publicly obvious.
Look, I suppose you can argue from whatever stance that this is a step in the right direction if things are getting tougher to bring down the net migration figures. But it's just whether it goes far enough, whether it will be implemented.
Look, this is the white paper that's coming out this week, and of course it comes off the back, as you rightly point out, those disastrous set of local election results, and especially the result in the by-election in Runcorn and Helsby, which was Labour's 16th safest seat and taken by Reform. They know, the government knows, this Labour government knows that they have to do something about net migration. This isn't this announcement that's coming out this week, and what we see on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph's got it, skilled migrants will need degrees if they want to get a job. This is about legal migration routes. Yeah. We've seen it was at 900,000 in 2023. Last year, to the end of June, it was something like 720,000, around that mark, and that number needs to come down. So what the government's proposing is to make it much harder for skilled migrants to come. There was a points-based scheme where you only needed an A-level or equivalent to come to this country on a skilled visa. They're now saying, the government's saying, you need a university degree and you need to be basically fluent in English. And they're hoping that as a result of that, the Home Office is hoping that the number of skilled migrants coming into this country will come down. Of course, that caveat that you mentioned, of course, Steve, is that in critical sectors like IT, construction, engineering, health and social care, that requirement isn't going to exist because those sectors need those people, and therefore they won't have this university degree requirement. But there's a battle going on right now between the Treasury, that wants to go for Rachel Reeves wants to go for economic growth, and then of course the Home Office, which is cognizant, very well aware of the threat of reform. And at the moment, given what happened 2 weeks ago, it's the Home Office that's winning this battle. And it's not, it's reminiscent of what we've seen in the United States with Elon Musk and Doge versus, of course, the old MAGA gang of Steve Bannon et al. That want to have a much tighter control on immigration into the United States, and of course Mr. Musk wants to, wants to bring in, the brightest talent into the United States.
I want to ask you, Theo, because it's just a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the government's proposed 18 to 30s mobility scheme that they were trying to bring in. Yeah. I'm sure our viewers at home will be wondering how this will link in. What's the difference between the two? How will they work hand in hand?
So the trick with the youth mobility scheme and what the government wants to do is it wants to get that youth mobility scheme down to just a one-year visa. Mm-hmm. And if it's a one-year visa, 12 months, it doesn't count in the numbers.
Oh. That's a bit
If it's longer, but apparently the EU is willing to budge on that. They were after something like 3 years in terms of a reciprocal scheme, and of course, British workers can go and work in the EU for up to 3 years, but they are prepared to negotiate on those particular numbers. But you're quite right to point out, if those numbers get lumped in, then it's only going to shoot up.
When Theo Usherwood revealed that the government wants to reduce visa durations to 1 year, so they no longer appear in the statistics, he wasn't just making an observation. He was blowing the lid off a calculated political con. This isn't reform, it's a statistical trick, a national sleight of hand disguised as administrative efficiency. If Labour truly intends to shorten visa lengths, simply to avoid counting migrants in the long-term immigration figures, then this isn't governance, it's gaslighting on a governmental scale. We're talking about policies that affect hundreds of thousands of real people, students, skilled workers, NHS staff. But instead of tackling immigration transparently and responsibly, Labour's alleged plan is to render these people invisible on paper, just by tweaking definition. They're still here. They're still using services. But magically on a spreadsheet? Poof, poof, gone, one. This is what happens when image management takes precedence over integrity. It's numerical theater, a spreadsheet illusion designed to give the public a false sense that immigration is under control, when in fact nothing has changed except the accounting gimmick. What's most dangerous is the illusion itself. Voters may see headlines claiming immigration is dropping, but on the ground, in schools, hospitals, housing, pressure is still rising. And when those everyday realities clash with official figures, trust in the system collapses. That's the real cost of Labour's trickery, the erosion of public confidence in truth itself. This strategy also exposes Labour's cowardice. They're trying to appease both pro-immigration voters and those demanding stricter controls by faking progress instead of making tough decisions. But voters aren't stupid. They don't just read numbers, they live the consequences. And no amount of visa fudging will hide that. In the end, this isn't just a flawed policy idea, it's proof that Labour would rather manipulate the optics than confront the reality. And that should worry every single person who still believes politics should be about solving problems, not hiding them.